Does everything in life happen according to divine will? Or does everything happen according to our will? How do we understand life? How do we make sense of what is happening to us and what is happening around us? Let us explore the issue of free will and divine will today. Shall we? Namaste. The issue of free will and divine will is a very old one. Well, if you had to listen to David Attenborough, the British natural historian, he is laying out a case against humanity's destructive actions that is taking the planet towards the sixth mass extinction. If you listen to him, you will definitely say there is a free will and that humanity is misusing its free will and causing destruction to the planet. Previous mass extinctions were caused due to natural factors, but not this one. This one is being precipitated because of humanity. But again, when you look at the complexity and enigma of human life, it is unpredictable and uncertain. And we have very little control over our life. This is the truth. Someone very insignificant becomes significant, and someone significant becomes insignificant. Misfortune becomes fortune, and fortune becomes misfortune. Separation becomes togetherness, and togetherness becomes separation. Unable to understand why, you call it divine will. So, what is the right view? Life or reality is one, but there are many ways to view it. Some views lead you to unhappiness. Some views lead you to great revolution, expansion, and synchronicities in life. Dependent on your version of reality, your decisions, your actions, and your destiny unfolds for you. If your version of reality is that there is only divine will, then that is how your experience of life would unfold. If your version is that all is divine will, you have absolutely no choice on anything, be it good or bad. Now I am sure some of you have heard this story from your parents or grandparents as children. It seems there was a king who had a wise minister who believed that everything that happens in life is divine will. One day the minister joined the king on a hunt. During the hunt, the king suffers an accident and his little finger is severed. The minister rushes to the aid of the king and gets him the necessary medical aid. However, the king is very disturbed and keeps asking, "Why did this ever happen to me?" The minister smiles and says, "My king, how will you ever be able to comprehend the ways of the divine? This is an act of divine will." As you can well imagine, the king flew into a rage and ordered the minister to be put in a cell as a punishment for speaking what he perceived as nonsense. A few weeks later, the king once again goes hunting and gets lost in the depths of the forest and is caught by a cannibalistic tribe that wants to offer him as a sacrifice to their goddess. So they gag the king, and as they're getting him ready, they see that his little finger is broken. They are disappointed and declare him as an imperfect offering for the goddess and let him go. The king returns to the palace and orders the release of the minister and apologizes to the minister for his haste and arrogance. The minister smiles and says, "All is divine will and all God's kindness." The king asks, "I can see my losing my finger was God's kindness. But how about you languishing in jail for 3 weeks? Is that also divine will?" The minister says, "Absolutely. For if I had not been in jail, I would have come along in the hunt, and they would have captured me and offered me as a sacrifice to the goddess." Now, my question to you is, what is your perception of the divine? Are you perceiving the divine to be a benevolent, compassionate being who cares for your happiness and well-being? Or are you perceiving the divine to be juggernaut, a merciless, unstoppable force that controls everything? If your perception were to be that the divine is benevolent being, Then you relax even in complex situations and you enjoy the ride. You trust the divine totally, like you would trust your best friend or your own child. But if your view of the divine is a ruthless force that dominates you and controls you, and does not care for your happiness and unhappiness, then in that reality, you live like a slave, a puppet whose strings are being pulled by its master. Life feels scary and miserable in this version. Do you get it? Now, if your view is that free will is all there is, then what happens? In this version, everything begins and ends with you. If you perform good actions, you have good results. If you perform bad actions, you have bad results. There is no force outside of you that determines your experience of life. If you eat too much sugar, you end up with a weak immune system. You end up with diabetes. So you stop sugar, you get on a no carb diet, your health improves and body heals. But not all situations are as simple as this in this version of reality. You fight a different kind of battle here. Your battle is against other people's free will. You are not the only one with a free will. You have more than 8 billion human population constantly exercising their free will, and oftentimes their will interferes with your will. Every one of them is fighting for their will to prevail and others to lose. Unless there is an awakening in consciousness, every individual will be exercising their free will only towards a self centric pursuit and not be inclusive of the other. When you awaken, you see others as an extension of yourself and you take into account their happiness and well being in your decisions and actions. Now, is there a third version of reality? Yes, there is a third version. This is an enlightened version of reality. This version of reality is a glorious treat to your consciousness. In this reality, your consciousness is so expanded and vast. It is like the vastness of space. In space, several planets, solar systems, and galaxies are moving around in harmony. Just like that, in an enlightened version of reality, perceptions don't collide. There is no effort to hold on to one and push out the other. There is no effort to understand and analyze any perception. There is no juggling between perceptions in confusion and conflict. In an enlightened reality, you are a witness to the arising and ceasing of perceptions. You see reality, you see life to be a vast flow. This flow may appear as a divine play one moment, it may appear as an interplay of karmic forces another moment, or reality may appear to be what it is, nothing beyond what is obvious. Birth is a fact, so also is death. Every moment is a movement of life and is lived totally, without a need to give any metaphysical explanation. A situation is simply so. In an enlightened consciousness, there is no one absolute version or absolute reality. You move beyond all versions. You may not be able to understand this enlightened way of perceiving reality through the ordinary frames of your mind. Your logic says black or white, both cannot coexist. But in an enlightened perception, opposites do coexist. A glimpse of this from a scientific perspective would be how an electron behaves both as a wave and a particle, or how a particle can exist in two places at the same time, a phenomenon called quantum superposition. Ekam sat, vipra bahuda vadanti. Truth ultimately is one, but the wise perceive it in many ways. Just the same, every version of reality is only a perception. Whether you see it as a free will or divine will, reality is one. We see it in many ways.